Welcome back. I'm Gary Parr.
And I'm Christine Williams.
And you are listening to Fiber Talk, the twice-weekly podcast for people who play with needles. And our guest this week, all the way from California, Mary Legallet. Hi, Mary.
Hello.
Welcome.
Now, Mary, for those who follow her or don't, it's the whimsicalstitch.com is the website. So it's this whimsical thing. Whimsical Wednesday is where I first found you. So we got to ask about that. But just a little bio here. Mary, needle pointing since high school, so we have to learn about that. A visit to Needlepoint Inc. in San Francisco that turned things around for you. Then you become a designer, and you dump your corporate world job and selling cars, it says here. And then you do this needlepoint thing now all the time. So you've been down the road here a little bit. So yeah. Talk about that. Talk about that high school. How do you get started needlepoint in high school? Home ec?
Honestly, I don't remember the physical act of learning how to needlepoint, so I don't have that charming story of learning in my grandmother's lap.
Okay, Mary, it's been good talking with you. Thanks for stopping by.
It's true. I honestly don't remember who taught me or learning. But my maternal great aunt did extraordinary embroidery, so I'm confident that is where the gene came from. My mother and I both needlepointed. Again, I honestly don't remember how young or old I was when I started. I do have vague memories of stitching on and off in high school and college, but I wasn't addicted yet. That addiction really kicked in the mid-90s.
But you did have that, so you did have your mother, so it was something you and your mother did together then, at least to a degree.
To a degree, absolutely. Because when I started going down the path of decorative needlepoint and threads, my mom stayed on the more traditional path. And I got to tell you, to this day, her basket weave tension was 10 times better than mine, always.
Because that's all she did?
That's all she did. And it was beautiful. It was absolutely beautiful.
There's an art to that basket weave. Just right. Mm-hmm. That's a real art, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I remember somebody either heard or somebody told me once you should do basket weave every day.
I agreed. Completely agreed. I love it. I absolutely love it.
Yeah. No, pass. Pass. Evil necessity in my book, but yeah. So, okay, what happened in the 90s? Needlepoint Inc. in San Francisco, that was the turning point?
Well, yeah, my mom took me there, and it was my first exposure to, I'm going to call them odd-shaped canvases, where I saw the Melissa Shirley cylinder tree. Oh. I saw decorative stitches. I saw stockings. Like stocking-shaped ornaments. I just saw things that I had never seen before, but more significantly, I saw the new threads. And
yes,
it's amazing to think I was blown away 25 years ago when, in fact, that was just the beginning. And I was just impressed by wool and cotton and, the simplest of metallics, never imagining what it was really going to become. But it was also the decorative stitches. I had never seen that done before, and done in a way that didn't look like you were cheating to get through an area faster.
That's an interesting perspective on that. I like that.
So it just clicked. And I came back to Los Angeles, got out. I'm sure most of the people listening to this will remember the Yellow Pages, but not everyone may. And I got out the Yellow Pages and I looked up needlepoint stores and just started, exploring. And anytime I went on a business trip, I would, find a way to steal a couple hours and I'd go to a, local needlepoint store just to see everything that was out there. So I saw stores in Boston, stores in Chicago, and again, it was just it was a whole new world to me. It didn't even feel like needlepoint. and I just loved it.
So you go to school because you're advertising marketing. So is
this wasn't
this was before that, huh?
This was the mid-90s. I had graduated from college.
Oh.
Let's not talk about how much long before.
Okay.
But no, I was working full time. I was at Toyota, and this was just something I rediscovered, and it was just magical to me. And I just fell in love with it. It was my refuge. I started with pillows and stockings and Christmas ornaments and, the traditional stuff. And I just loved it. It was a great way. I would come home from work, and it was just a great way to decompress.
So it did give you that release and something
Absolutely.
to do it in a hotel room at night when you're traveling then, huh?
And or at home. I mean, it was just a great way to unwind, and I had something to show for my time. Yes, I would go out with friends and I would do things, and I was involved in volunteer organizations, but this was just something that I had a physical something.
Yes.
To show for my time. And I loved it. I never in a million years imagined that I would be doing it full time 20 some odd years later, but here I am. So.
Yeah. So what makes that transition? You got a corporate job and Toyota, that's not going away anytime soon. What makes you just walk away or end it?
It is going, in my case, it did go away.
Oh.
Toyota USA made a decision in 2014 to consolidate their U.S. operations in Plano, Texas. So they moved their sales and distribution headquarters from Torrance, California, their engineering group from part of it, I think, from Georgetown and or Ann Arbor, Michigan, and one other that I can't think of off the top of my head right now. Those were three separate subsidiaries in the United States. They chose to consolidate all of them in Plano, Texas, and I did not want to move to Texas.
Okay, especially Plano.
We're not going to elaborate on that. It was not the right fit for me. And so I had an opportunity to get out. I took it and Melissa Shirley had been whispering in my ear, would you consider writing stitch guides for me? She had done that for a few years, and I kept saying no because I didn't have the bandwidth to do it. And then when I left, she knew I was leaving Toyota, and she, mentioned it again. I'm like, no, I can't do that. I need to get a real job. And I didn't know what that real job was going to be. And I took some time off, traveled a little bit. And by the end of my trip, I was like, what do I have to lose? You've got to give this a shot. And
right.
It'll be 3 years ago in November. So that's when I started doing this.
So how is it you hook up with Melissa Shirley and she's asking you to do stitch guides? That's
I also had the great good fortune. Melissa was very close to the owner of the what one would call my local needlepoint store in Santa Monica called Aristea Needlepoint. And it was kind of my love for Melissa Shirley fruit pillows was and kind of still is a running joke at Aristea. And Melissa heard about the fruit pillows, and at a trunk show that she came down to visit for, I finally got to meet her. I felt like I was meeting a rock star. I probably made an absolute fool. I totally geeked out. I totally geeked out. And, fortunately she doesn't remind me of that, but I'm confident that I geeked out. And I just got to know her over the years, and she liked my work, and I liked her, and here we are.
So that's the nucleus for your business then.
Yes, that's where it started. And, you know, I worked in her booth for a couple trade shows to, you know, A, help her, but also B, get to know people, you know, get to know store owners, and got to meet some other designers that way. And it's just kind of going from there. So that's how it came to be.
Was it terrifying to do that? Because, you know, you're going from a job that's a steady paycheck and an established corporate structure and all of those things. And I imagine part of it is liberating because you don't have that corporate structure, but the other part is terrifying. So what was that experience like for you going out on your own like that?
It was terrifying. There are days that it is still terrifying. In my corporate life, we focused on our specialties. For me, that was marketing communications, while others focused on what there's logistics or finance, product planning, distribution. You get the idea.
Mm-hmm.
What I'm enjoying most is being singularly responsible for all the moving parts instead of just one of the moving parts. So I'm marketing, I'm supply chain, I'm bookkeeping, I'm head of client services, I'm digital support, I'm writing, production manager, travel planner, data analysis. I'm learning a ton about the different levers, and I can see firsthand which levers to adjust to make it all work. That info wasn't always available to me in my old world. And sometimes sometimes that was frustrating. I understood why, but it was like frustrating. But now I miss the steady paycheck. I'm not going to lie. On top of this, if something goes right, I can revel in that success. But if something goes wrong, it's on me and I can fix it.
Mm-hmm.
There's no finger pointing. And as, you know, a former president said, the buck stops here, and that's the only place it can stop because it can't go anywhere else. So I like that. I like owning it. And I'll be honest with you, I've been watching The Office on Netflix while writing for the past few weeks, and it's absolutely hysterical and it's absolutely true, and I don't miss that. I absolutely don't miss it.
That's what I hated about that show. I never enjoyed that show just because it's just too true, and it just makes me ill.
Oh, true. I mean, yes, you miss the Jims and the Pams, but the Dwights just ruined everything. So I don't miss it. I miss some of the people, but I don't miss the politics.
Yep. So describe your business. What do you do? And I'm with you. That's a real plus when something goes wrong. The good stuff, whatever. But when something goes wrong, there's no finger pointing. It's just look in a mirror and go fix it. And I think that's a plus. Yeah.
I like that, and I like it a lot, and I like the fact that you can fix it on the spot. You don't have to wait to get approval. You can just get it fixed. What was the last question? Oh, what do I do?
Describe your operation. What is it? What all do you do?
Okay, so I write stitch guides and stitch concepts. Stitch guides include color-coded stitch diagrams, close-up photography of individual stitched elements of the piece, alternative thread suggestions, and insight from my own experience stitching the piece. So these are all things that I've stitched.
Uh-huh.
Stitch concepts are your more traditional stitch guide with diagrams, thread suggestions, and instructions. As I have not stitched those pieces, there are no accompanying photographs. So I wanted to provide a distinction between the two because I think the photography is a huge help. So I just want people to know, what they're, the context of what they're getting. I also am considered I guess I'm what you would call a traveling teacher, where I travel to different stores across the country to teach different kinds of classes. So you have your more traditional, workshop class where you teach a single project. I recently did that at Bedecked and Bedazzled in Baltimore, where I taught Royal Peeps by Zecca, and I taught Melissa Shirley's Passion Flowers and Bird. And I also teach embellishment classes where I provide a custom stitch concept for the customer's chosen canvas. Then my personal favorite is what I call the project choice classes, where the customers select the whimsicalstitch.com project of their choice, and I work with the students on those pieces. I like that because you get a wide variety of canvases, because right now I have a total of 48 stitch guides and concepts, so there should be something that appeals to everybody. But I'm also intimately familiar with all of those guides, so I can spend more time focusing on what the students want as opposed to thinking up a new stitch for an area. I think it's a better teaching opportunity, because then when you have the teachable moments, I can share them with everybody.
So let's go back to the guides and the concepts. So a guide is let's explore that. So a guide is you figure out stitches, threads, and you actually stitch it and photograph it. And it sounds to me like it gets about as close as you can get to a charted canvas directions with a painted canvas. Then is that fair?
I guess, yeah, that's fair. I never thought of it that way, but I would say that's fair. Yes, that's fair.
Okay. Sorry.
And how much of that
charted canvas perspective, you know?
Right. That's Gary's a charted guy. But so how much of that comes from what you think is appropriate or what appeals to you, and how much of it comes from the designer of the painted canvas? So is it collaborative? Is it, here's a canvas, I'm going to tell you nothing and I'm curious to see what you come up with, or here's what I want you to do?
The artists that I work with, generally speaking, I have full discretion of doing what I want. That said, there have been a couple times where it's like, well, have you thought about this? And my initial reaction is to be embarrassed, because it's like, why didn't I think of that? But in actually the 2 times that that's happened, they were actually great ideas and I incorporated them. I'll take a great idea from anybody.
Why would you be embarrassed because you didn't think of exactly the same thing as someone else?
Because if it's a better idea than mine.
No. I like all that.
How's that for honesty?
Yeah. Everybody's going to have a better idea sometimes.
That's true. That's very, very true. But no, generally speaking, I have, I can do whatever I want. I prefer it to be that way because if I'm going to be teaching, if I'm going to be putting my name on it, I want it to reflect what I think is the best thing for it.
Mm-hmm.
So that's how generally speaking we do it.
Okay, I gotta ask the dumb guy question, because it's the one that bugs me all the time about painted canvases. Particularly, now I was looking at some earlier today on somebody's store site, and these detailed canvases where you might have a pot full of flowers or a garden scene or something like that. I always struggle because I mean I don't do painted canvases, but I think, all right, what would I do with that? And when it's these detailed canvases, all I can see is that the only way you can do it and do it effectively is with basket weave, because that's the only way you can deal with all those little areas. And I struggle with that. And then I'll see somebody take one of those things and use different stitches and different threads and just make it absolutely sing. And so I just struggle with that whole idea of, because for me, a painted canvas that you can actually stitch has a lot of open, solid areas, so you can actually get going with a stitch and have it have a visual presence. So I don't know if I even really have a question. It's just that I just deal with that. How do you deal with that?
So I think there's actually 2 canvases that I saw recently that I think fall into the category that you're talking about. And these two canvases, the way that they were stitched could not have been more different from each other, and were both perfect. So what I'm hearing you describe is something very similar to, I would say, Annie O'Brien Gonzalez that Melissa Shirley represents. And so my answer is in that vein, meaning you have a beautiful floral piece with, and it doesn't have to be floral, but that's an easier one to get your head around, that has either unusual colors or a variegated palette, in the sky or in the vase or whatever, that you think, I can't stitch this because there's only one way to stitch this. And when I first saw those canvases, I'll be honest with you, I thought the same thing. And the reality is, it's all about the threads that you choose. And with florals, an obvious solution is silk ribbons, but something else, and this is actually a technique that I love, is that should always be considered, is what I call open work, where you'll stitch it in a thread of a solid colored thread, but you will not stitch every single intersection on the canvas. And this is where Cranic metallics actually shine. This is where I love Elegance and Subtlety by Rainbow Gallery. It's a silk pearl, because you have these single strand threads and solid colors that pick a lighter weight than the canvas would typically call for. Do an open stitch, so you're combining a texture via the thread and a pattern via the thread, but the canvas is showing through. It's where you add texture via, others, a pattern in your more traditional stitch, whether that's woven Hungarian or a Nobuko stitch, whatever that is. Use the thread colors to tell the story that painting, that canvas is trying to portray. Then there was another one, and I wish I knew the name of the artist, so I apologize. It was a very exquisitely painted cat, and it was by Bedecked and Bedazzled, and it was just all these beautiful colors, and it was a very contemporary looking painting. But again, you're like, how? Without just plain needlepointing it. And I've seen this on a few canvases on Pinterest, and this is the first time that I saw it live, in person. And what the stitcher did, and I'm not sure if it was Ruth or a customer of Ruth's, but what they did was just in a lightweight Cranic metallic, the entire canvas was covered in squares inside squares. And so you had a geometric on top of this beautifully painted canvas.
Oh, that sounds beautiful.
Was gorgeous.
Yeah, I remember when that showed up, and it was gorgeous, mind-blowing is what it was. I couldn't believe the impact.
It was incredible. And I saw it at the Framers, and I just fell in love with it. And I haven't done that. I have not done that yet on a canvas. I will do it sometime, but it has to be the right canvas. And if I don't do it on an entire canvas, I will certainly do it on a vase or in water or something like that. But it was just absolutely exquisite. And that's where needlepoint ink blew my mind in 1995, that's blowing my mind today. Because it's just gorgeous. It's absolutely gorgeous.
So what you're telling me here is personally, I have to get past the the mindset that a painted canvas, the painted areas are areas that tell me when a color starts and stops, and I need to fill that in. I have to get past that and in my mind and visually accept the painting part as part of the overall image, piece of art, whatever it is. And I'm not doing that. Yeah.
Exactly. And I struggled with that as well when I first started needlepointing. And sorry about the noise. And my teacher would be like, okay, let's do some open work here. And I'm like, no. I refused to do open work for probably the first 3 to 4 years that I stitched, because I did not want a single piece of naked canvas. And that's what I called it. There was to be no naked canvas. And now I can't imagine I'm the opposite of you. I can't imagine a canvas that has every single intersection covered, because I love the painting, which I know it sounds crazy that you're not stitching something so you can look at the painting of it, but then why are you doing needlepoint if you like the design underneath and the painting of it? It is counterintuitive, but what I love about needlepoint is that that it all comes together, where you can get the beautiful painting, but you can add the element of texture and another level of design, and it all works.
Yeah,
it's fantastic.
And I see it work all the time. But see, that was my learning of needlepoint, was wool on a painted thing and fill everything in and cover everything up, and after a while, just all that basket weaving, especially when you got done with the image of whatever it was, and then.
Hold on.
Yep.
Sorry about that.
You got it?
Yep.
Okay.
It's gone.
See, that was, that is where I run into trouble, because my early learning of needlepoint was strictly basket weave, originally tent stitch, until I distorted canvas and realized there had to be a better way. But but basket weave with wool, and fill in everything. And then what really turned me off on painted canvases was I would get the art piece done, and then I had to fill in all the background. And to me, that it just I'm moving on. I got better things to do, like take a nap. And so that was what I learned, was fill everything in. And I can't get over that hump of let that paint show through and let that part of the art be part of the overall result. I just struggle with that. Yeah.
I was there, and it took me a while to get over it. I might recommend start with a small piece so you don't have that much invested in it, financially or emotionally, and just try it. And it's such a beautiful combination of, you have, whether it's Melissa Prince or Melissa Shirley or, Karen Hennessy, they have beautiful, beautiful painting. Celebrate it. You can celebrate it by showing it. You don't have to celebrate it by covering it.
So instead of using that as a guide, really all you're doing is enhancing the painting that already exists.
Much better said than how I said it. Yes.
But I think it totally changes the way you look at it. It's a totally different conversation then, because you're not using that as a stitch guide, if you will. It's not a paint by numbers anymore. That becomes the background upon which you're going to stitch something of your choosing, which is kind of a cool way to think about it.
But I think you have to jump away from the idea of it being paint by number.
Yeah, exactly.
I think I think that is critical, because if that is the way that you can only see it, that's going to be whether what I do or, what other teachers do, that's going to be a challenge.
Mm-hmm.
Because it really has to be the fusion of both. And I'm thinking about my first two-sided Melissa Shirley Santa. Every single intersection is covered. And I still really, really love it. I bring it out every Christmas. I know that I would not do it the same way if I stitched it today, but I still love it. And there was a period in time that I actually felt guilty that I was covering up this beautiful shading, because it is exquisite, and I don't want them to not shade it. I like having the option of, covering up or leaving it open. But, there was a period where I felt guilty for covering up the shading, and now I have the best of both worlds.
Yeah, and it's that shading that's where my problem really reaches a height. Is okay, how am I ever going to stitch and replicate this shading? And so
you're not.
I'm not.
You're not.
So, yeah.
And part of that, I need
help.
Is just,
I need therapy. I can just tell I need therapy.
Well, we all need therapy, but the other reality is, I don't think, and there are exquisite threads out there, but I don't think that every color that a needlepoint artist paints has a matching thread.
Mm-hmm.
And you have to take that into account as well. Because let's see, DMC floss has, hundreds of colors, but not every color in the rainbow. For me, gray and yellow are the hardest threads to find.
Mm.
And
right.
The hardest threads to find. The number of values are, I wish there, regardless of brand or type of thread, I wish there were more in those two families. And when I'm traveling, if I see gray threads, I buy them just to have them. So there's no way that every color value is out there. And there are some artists that have some very unusual colors, and that's a good thing. But, threads don't support every color in the rainbow. As many as there are. It's kind of strange, but it's true.
I love the way, so I'm sorry, Gary.
No, go ahead.
I think that, so this conversation has really changed the way I think about painted canvas, right? Because I was with Gary that, okay, so to use the cat example, you buy a painted canvas of a cat because you would like to hang a picture of a cat. And so then you stitch within the lines, and you might add some texture or something like that, but you're creating a cat. The way this conversation has taken me and the way I'm thinking about it as we're talking is, to me, now you're buying a canvas that happens to be something that's beautiful, and you're stitching maybe kind of whatever you want on top of it that might enhance the cat. It might bring the cat up out of the painting. You could maybe not stitch anything on the cat at all, or stitch something in such a fine thread that all it does is create luminance without creating any sort of thread texture or coverage, right? Like in something of, like in even the finest metallics, like the finest cryonics, so that you're not covering the painting at all. All you're doing is giving it light, right?
There is, gosh, I'm trying to remember. I believe that it's Lanny of Lanny Designs has some exquisite Asian women.
Yes, that would be a great example.
And Beverly Churchfield at Aristea, who has been doing this, she has a knowledge base that's unbelievable. Beverly's like, there isn't, because it's just this perfect transition from, it's a from a flush to a cheek and it's so subtle and it's so perfect. And Bev's like, the threads don't exist for this. Use, I think it's like 1 or 2 plies of floss, which to me is, I have a light touch. That's beyond my comfort level, because that's the only way that you can replicate this, the color scheme. And it's exquisite and it works. And so it's combining everything available to you to get to the look that you're looking for. And because the thought of those same faces being done in, whether it's Splendor or DMC floss or Anchor floss, whatever that is, the colors aren't going to match perfectly. And it's such a subtle transition, and it's so beautiful that this gets you to the same place. And it actually gets you to a better place. Windows. I still remember when Wendy Harwood taught me how to do windows. Well, it's actually glass. I was doing a candy jar that had these big, huge gumballs in it, a glass candy jar. And the gumballs were these great jewel tone, fun colors. And I was completely focused on that. And Wendy was like, oh no, you're going to do a glass stitch. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And it was with, I believe it was 032 Kranick white. And it was an open stitch. So I'm covering these beautiful gumballs with a white Kranick. And it was perfect because it looked like glass. And
so you never stitched the gumballs.
Nope. But they're perfect. They are absolutely perfect. And they're on the stocking of my cousin's son.
And see, that would be problem number 1 for me. How do I stitch the gumballs, and then what do I put over it so it looks like glass?
And there are some people that do that. Yeah. There are some people who use fire and ice, and they will stitch the gumballs, and then they will just cover the same area with, top to bottom of the fire and ice. It works. It's not what I prefer. It's not my style, but it does absolutely work.
You mentioned several designers. How does that interaction work with you in terms of, are you at a point now where they come to you to do stitch guides or to stitch models? How describe that whole interaction?
It's really both. It's both. I go to them if I'm looking for a project. They come to me if they want something stitched. It's just what's needed at the time. I'm, working with a couple people trying to, for a project class for next year. So I'm talking to a couple designers, and it's really just what fits. It's what fits the most important thing is that it fits the students that I'm going to be teaching. And so the store owner will have a big say in what they want in terms of theme. And then we'll kind of agree on a theme and then go from there.
Seems to be an incredible number, particularly painted canvas, an incredible number of designers, known or unknown or little known. And because you hear names, some names you hear a lot, and others are just only occasional. And is there a large community of people who are just painting the art because they enjoy it?
Well, I think everyone I know is they absolutely enjoy it, but they're also trying to make a living. So speaking for myself, I wouldn't be doing this if I didn't love it. And I think that's true of almost every needlepoint designer that I've met. It's interesting because the designers, the store owners, the teachers, it depends. Sometimes the store owner has a very specific vision of what she wants in terms of theme or designer or whatever. Sometimes it's a collaboration between the store owner and the teacher. It's really the most important thing is that the store's customers will like what we're doing. And so whatever the relationship mix is, we figure out what will work best for those customers and go from there. There are certain areas of the country that don't like Halloween stitching is not popular. There are certain areas of the country that, doing Christmas stuff isn't a great idea. A lot of people may do it, but in terms of a workshop, it's not a great idea. There are other parts of the country that they could do Christmas all year round. Every area is different. And so you have to, but the customers are the most important part of the mix. So you have to do something that will appeal to the broadest number of people.
I've often wondered about that. And you just answered the question. That there's different areas in the country where different things are popular, because I don't get the Halloween thing at all. I just never have. And yet you run into people all the time who are just crazy about witches and pumpkins and all kinds of things, and oranges and blacks. And so you do see that all over the country. You see different interest areas, different regions. Mm-hmm. That's interesting.
Absolutely. One of my biggest surprises is 4th of July. It's one day, and it is definitely becoming more popular. Spring as a whole, whether it's Easter or just spring, again, not something that I follow. It's not a thing for me, but people love it. I love Christmas. I've seen some gorgeous Hanukkah and dreidel themed items. Tolly's bags can be exquisite. So there are just a lot of things, and it's also very regional.
Fascinating. Talk about, this is where I ran into you, Whimsical Wednesdays and your Small Space Sundays. Talk about what you're doing there and what.
It's all stitches, and I blame a former coworker for it, because I did not want to be a blogger. And she sat me down and said, "But you have to." And I was like, "Why?" Because anyone can be a blogger. I didn't know, and she says, because of search engine optimization. Like, okay, to get my name out there.
Right, exactly.
So I started looking at needlepoint blogs. And the first thing I noticed was that there were some blogs that the last post was from 2 to 3 years ago. So that told me I have to do this on a regular basis. And because what's the point? Then the second thing I noticed is I think it's lovely that this person had a lovely time in a lovely city and had lovely food.
Thank you.
But you kind of don't care.
I'm very happy for this lovely person, but that's not teaching me anything. And so that's how Whimsical Wednesday came to be, which was, okay, I'm going to do this on a regular basis and I'm going to teach you something. And I went to dinner with a college friend of mine, and we were talking, and I told her what I was up to, and we sat there, and she's a young adult author, and we brainstormed names, and so thanks to my friend Lisa Yee, we have Whimsical Wednesday.
Because, anybody that follows that over time collects a pretty good body of stitches and how to do them and how they work and what they look like. Yeah.
Yes, they do. It is also, I find it fascinating that, as much as I agree with you, that people still have questions and people still want it in a book format. And so I am working on my first book.
Oh, good.
That's
my first
exciting.
stitch book. Yes. So that hopefully will come out after the first of the year.
Excellent. That'll be popular, I'm sure.
I hope so.
And then Small Space Sunday. I don't pay as much attention to that.
It's It's the exact same thing as Whimsical Wednesdays. It's just a small space stitch.
Okay.
And it's not as frequent because there's only so many small space stitches in the world. I am breaking that up a little bit, and I include an occasional stitching Sunday where I take something that a previous Whimsical Wednesday or Small Space Sunday post, and I show that same stitch in a different project just so you can see the different ways that the same stitch can be accomplished. So they are definitely still on Wednesdays and Sundays, but Sunday is sometimes a stitching Sunday as opposed to a Small Space Sunday.
When you do classes, what are the things that challenge people the most when you in your classes?
I am surprised at how many people don't think they can do it, but they can. And I think sometimes their lack of confidence gets in the way of their ability. I have yet to meet someone who can't stitch. I have met people with varying abilities, but I am surprised at how many people don't think they can do it, and they absolutely can. And I just think that they need that little boost or the little kick, gentle, I promise, to let them know that they can do it. It's because it's just a combination of counting and finding that sequence that works for you. Identify a pattern. Say it's the 2-3-2 of a Hungarian stitch. Repeat it to yourself. Talk to yourself. Doesn't matter as you move across the canvas. I do it all the time. I've been doing this for 20 some odd years, and I still talk to myself as I stitch, particularly if it's a more complex stitch. And if you make a mistake, it's fixable. The worst thing that can happen is that you have to rip it out. The best thing that can happen is that you've invented a new stitch. If it's a consistent pattern and you like how it looks, then it's the right stitch for the spot. And I'll be honest with you, I have several stitches that I consider go-to stitches that came to me via mistakes I made. I actually had a blog post about this recently. I was at Aristay and a customer was turning in a project, and we were admiring it, and she said, "Oh yeah, this stitch is a mistake." And I looked at it and I recognized what I think it was supposed to be, and I said, "But I have to be honest with you, I like what you did." And I took a picture of it, I diagrammed it, and it's now a stitch. She thinks it's a mistake, but it's not. It's cute. It's a little bit different. I mean, that's the fun thing about this. You can skip a row, you can skip 2 rows, and it still works. You just have to consistently skip 2 rows.
Right.
You
There's
can't
no
skip
needlepoint police.
No, and no, there isn't. And I think that letting people do things that are different, make what they think are mistakes, and experiment is what will keep this going. Because if we try to police it, it's not going to work. And the other reality is I have some very strong opinions on things. Don't get me wrong, but if you have a different opinion, and if that is what you like, then that is what you should do. Hello?
Yeah.
Yeah, I think all of those things make sense.
Just absorbing that, yes.
Yeah.
And
you can't fail. Well, I mean, you can make a mistake, but you can always, it's like you said, the worst thing that can happen is that you can do it over again, you know?
Okay, I take it back. The worst thing that can happen is that if you accidentally if you accidentally cut the canvas, that is also fixable. That is probably the worst thing that can happen. But you can rip out stitches. If you don't like it, rip it out. If I don't like it and you like it, it stays in. If I like it and you don't like it, take it out. It's what makes the stitcher happy.
What's a typical day for you?
Writing, and then some more writing.
Well, you're no fun.
I know. Okay, there's probably some Facebook and Twitter in there, but okay, so writing, Facebook, Twitter, writing, Facebook, Twitter, more writing.
Do you get to stitch every now and then?
I do. I can't break I mean, like I said, I stitched, when I would come home from work or when I would travel. To this day, I can't break myself from my longtime habit of stitching only at night. And so I still treat the day as a work day, and then I will stitch at night. It's hard for me to stitch during the day. I can't. It's just so weird.
Because you feel like you're cheating the game or something?
Yeah, that I understand.
Yeah, absolutely. I feel like I feel like I should be working, even though I'm working.
Yeah, that's the weird thing. Yeah, your stitching is your work, but yeah.
It's 20 some odd years of only stitching at night. It's very hard. It's very hard to tell myself it's okay to do this at 1:00 in the afternoon. Because that's also my TV time. So it's also, I feel guilty watching TV at 1:00 in the afternoon while I'm stitching.
That's the best thing about stitching, is that it gives you guilt-free television watching, because I'm very fidgety, because I feel the same way that not that I can't watch TV, there's nothing wrong, and by all means I'm not criticizing people that sit and watch TV. I'm lamenting the fact that I can watch TV for about 10 minutes unless it's a ridiculously engrossing show without saying, all right, I need to be doing something with my hands, and I preferably not folding laundry. So having needlework to do is like, oh, now I can watch TV and I don't feel guilty about it. So this is like the best binge watching thing. So it's great. So I actually watch TV. Otherwise I don't watch TV. Like for years, there's been years that my son and I have not had television because we just don't watch TV because there's always something else that we would rather do.
Totally agree. If I'm not doing something while I'm watching TV, I get antsy. I feel guilty. The only TV shows or movies that I can watch without doing anything are things that have subtitles.
Yes, then it becomes difficult.
It's a little difficult to watch Narcos while you're stitching.
Yes, I was just going to say.
It's a little difficult. Difficult.
So we've joked around in the past, a long time ago, that we were going to do one on books to listen to on tape and then TV shows to watch. And so Narcos is one that I've been watching in air quotes, and it is really tough. So I'm really relying on my high school Spanish to follow what's going on, and I'm giving up a lot of the plot line of it.
What season are you on?
The current season.
Okay, you're the exact same spot I'm in, where I was counting on, high school Spanish that I didn't pay much attention to, let's be honest.
Yeah.
And I'm like, okay, I'm not getting this. I'm just going to have to go with sign language and just figure this out. It's, yeah.
So things like that. But then things like The Crown are perfect. All those things, right?
Yep.
We could do we should do a panel show of Netflix that I have loved while stitching.
Yeah. I actually did a blog on it, and not many people watch the shows that I watch. That was my That was my takeaway from that one. And let's not put that part in the final podcast.
Well, why?
Let's not.
Okay.
I don't watch Hallmark TV.
Well, neither do I. So now I'm fascinated because I'm sure you're going to have some really good recommendations.
We can't take this out because I don't watch Hallmark TV either. So.
Oh no. So
Okay.
there's nothing wrong with the Lifetime channel, but that said, if you're not a Lifetime,
I'm not a Lifetime Hallmark girl.
No, me neither. So we've already.
Have you watched Justified?
Yes.
Yeah.
Oh yes. Oh yes.
Okay. Okay, Justified, Sneaky Pete.
Yep. See, you're amongst good company here. This is normal.
Okay, Justified, Sneaky Pete, Ozarks.
Nope.
Was great.
Writing that down.
With Jason Bateman. Give me a minute. Oh, The Bridge. It's deep in Amazon. That's a fascinating crime drama.
Mm-hmm.
The Americans.
Yep.
Ray Donovan.
Broadchurch.
Oh,
yes.
Loved that.
Wasn't it one of my favorites?
Deadwood.
Yes.
Yes.
Serious potty mouth, but it's fantastic.
Yes. Luther.
Oh, love him. Love him.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. See, and you said that you were going to be amongst people that didn't like the same TV as you, and I think you found your people.
I think I might have found my TV people. Bloodline.
Black Mirror.
Okay, I need to write that one down.
Yes.
Black Mirror. Okay.
Yeah.
The listeners are going right now. Please, folks.
Right? No. So everybody's going to stop and like pause the podcast and write things down. Black Mirror it's sort of a modern day Twilight Zone. So every episode is a standalone, and there are sort of almost like cautionary tales of the advancements of technology, but in this kooky, weird ways. They're very strange, and some of them are brilliant, absolutely brilliant, and then some of them are just good. But definitely worth watching.
Okay. Arrested Development.
Yes.
Yes.
We're in the 6th season of West Wing. I never paid a lick of attention to it until we started it on Netflix. What an incredible series.
It's especially now.
Now help.
Yeah. Shameless.
Yes. Handmaid's Tale.
Oh God, that was so disturbing and so good.
And yes.
Unbreakable Kimmy Schmidt.
Yes.
I'm looking at my Netflix right now.
We're gonna have
Mad Men.
Yes.
Grace and Frankie.
Oh, that's hilarious.
The Fall.
The Fall. I'll have to look into that.
I don't know The Fall.
Yeah.
Oh, The Killing.
And The Killing. Yep. Both of those are excellent.
Chef's Table is really good. I know it's not a drama, but it's really interesting.
I like that one too. Every show is a different restaurant.
Yeah.
It's really good.
I cannot wait for season 2 of The Crown. Gilmore Girls, but not the reboot. The reboot was terrible. Peaky Blinders.
Yes.
That is borderline unintelligible because of the accents, but it's fantastic.
All right. So if we're going to go deep into British TV, then you need to do The Detectorists.
What is that?
The Detectorists, which is a ridiculous show about. There's no good way for me to describe it. It's ridiculous British TV. That's all I can say.
Parks and Rec.
Mm-hmm. We have a catalog now. I feel like I now have my next few months like mapped out. Although most of these things are things that I think we've all seen, which is pretty great.
I have a healthy little list here. This is good.
Yeah.
Okay. Mm-hmm.
And that's just Netflix.
Right. Once you delve into like Amazon and then Hulu, then there's a whole other.
We're
gonna have to
Amazon, Bosch.
Oh yes, yes, absolutely. But I got to tell you, I loved Sneaky Pete.
Yes.
That was
Sherlock.
Yep.
Yes.
Can't forget Sherlock.
My only frustration with Sherlock, and actually with a lot of British shows, is that the seasons are so short.
Yes, agreed. Because you want to get into it a little bit more, and then they're
like when the wife turned out to be, bad.
Yes.
It's like wait. Right.
Don't give it away.
Exactly.
All right. We have to commit to this. So we're going to commit to an entire show about, I think we should do television, needlework television. But then I think we should also do either books on tape or other podcasts that are not needlework related.
Okay.
I think that would be fun.
Okay. All right.
Because there are so many good ones because, it's one thing to listen to needlework ones, but then there's so many weird podcasts out there that are well worth listening to.
Right.
Okay. We have our list.
All right.
We got to wrap this up. Mary, it's been a real treat. Thanks.
Yeah.
Well, thank you. I so appreciate this.
People.
Pardon?
Now you have TV people.
I know. Thank you.
You were afraid that, no.
I was so afraid.
No.
Because I was very disappointed at the responses to my, well, what do you watch? I'm like, oh my God, Hallmark TV. Never in a million years.
Nope. No thanks.
Yeah,
okay,
exactly.
Mary.
Thank you.
That's it. Thanks a lot, Mary.
Okay, my pleasure. Bye-bye.
Bye.
All right, take care.